Naomi Schaefer-Riley is a fellow at the American Enterprise Institute and a contributor to the Wall Street Journal. Naomi, you make a very interesting and I think persuasive case that there are risks to health, to obviously educational development and personal and social development from not opening the schools. But we just heard that 47% say it's not safe.
Yeah, well, I think that basically parents are looking for guidance. I'm glad to see that the momentum is shifting in a lot of these states. Officials are really saying we are going to do our best to get everybody back in the classroom finally. But for months, they have been saying you should stay in your homes no matter what. And children are at risk too. And your family could be at risk if you send your children out. And so I think parents have really taken that message to heart. And now everyone is scared stiff to send their kids back to school in the fall. So the messaging is really going to have to change over the summer. And people are going to have to be very clear to parents about what the specific risks are and that children are frankly at the lowest level of risk.
So you believe that parents basically are over worrying this situation. Is that too big a leap?
No, I think that that's probably true. I think that they are taking the message from public health officials and from their local school officials and from politicians, that have said, we need to just stay home as much as possible. And I understand, their concerns, but I also think we live in a society where we try to minimize all risk for children. And, that is certainly influencing this. I mean, everything from bicycle helmets, to, how often we sue, companies and schools and school districts for any harm that comes to our children. And so, we just live in a world where we're trying to minimize that risk at all times. And this is a very scary virus, obviously, and parents want to minimize that risk to the extent they can. But of course, a lot of parents really, have to make some very hard decisions about the fall, in terms of their own economic output.
Mm-hmm. So I understand you have young children. I have a teenager who's starting high school in the fall. How do you social distance in kindergarten? How do you create a safe space among the primary grades like that, where there's a lot of interplay between children? I mean, how do you keep your hands to yourself? You can't do it under normal circumstances. How do you force a 5-year-old to wear a mask all day?
It's impossible. And the CDC put out these recommendations, and I read them and I said, has anyone at the CDC ever met a 5-year-old? I mean, these were ludicrous. They wanted kids to, not only keep their hands themselves, stay apart, put on masks, never touch the same toy that somebody else had touched, watch their hands for 20 seconds after they use a tissue. I mean, I don't know any kindergarten teacher who will be able to manage this kind of insanity. And so I think we just have to be honest that there will be risks. Some kids will likely, get it. And, but this is how school is going to work. We have to be realistic about this. We can't simply just, look at these CDC. My concern is you look at these CDC guidelines and some districts are just going to throw up their hands and say, oh, we can never manage this, so we better just stay online until there's a vaccine.
So what about as you move into the higher grades, let's say, from the primary schools, what about a hybrid kind of approach where some days the kids are doing distant learning and some days they're in the classroom to foster the kind of social distancing that we know or we think we know actually mitigates the spread?
Maybe you can handle that at the high school level to some degree, although frankly, a lot of kids have just not been checking into the Zoom meetings that happened this spring. And, are parents going to be able to stay home, even if they don't have to monitor every bit of work? They're going to have to make sure that the kid is actually getting online and listening to the classes instead of just goofing off at home. I mean, that's definitely one concern. The other thing I think is just online learning is not proven to be particularly effective. And surveys show that parents are very upset with how little their kids have learned over the last few months. I think there's going to be a huge amount of slide. You already see slide over the summer in terms of academic outcomes, and it's the worst for kids who are at the bottom, economically. And so you're just going to see even more of that as this goes on. And I think parents have realized that online learning is just not what it was cracked up to be, or certainly not in the form that it was made. And so, you can try to do some kind of hybrid, but it's very hard.
I hear your point there, and I agree with you. And I think that there's a technology gap between better off families and those who are less, and making sure that all kids have the technology to hook in, the Wi-Fi, the laptop or the iPad, whatever it is. There's a big and a big gap there between rich and poor, and that's not fair and it's not right.
But it's also a big gap in terms of parental monitoring. I mean, even if you have the technology, the fact of the matter, a lot of upper class parents can be at home. Even if they are working, they can stay home with their kids. They can help them with whatever, glitches are in their Zoom meeting, or printing out things, or helping monitor their kids' work. And for parents who are, say, in the service industry, what are you going to do? Leave the kid at home and just say, figure it out for yourself?